Hi there, and welcome to this session. I know a lot of you are looking to make the journey to cloud and wondering how you're going to go about doing that. I know you don't run migrations very often, and so it's natural to feel a little bit anxious, if not nervous, about how it's all going to work, but you've come to the right session. I'm going to show you how you can use the Cloud Migration Assistance to make the move to cloud. Migrations are amazing things, aren't they? This image here of birds flying in a perfect flying V, making the distance, really, awesome migration, covering thousands of miles. But migrations are also can be very difficult, like this wild river crossing, a lot of chaos, a lot of uncertainty going on. Migrations can be very difficult, and who can forget the epic March of the Penguins? This penguin here jumping out, happy feet, ready to take on the most difficult migration path the Earth can throw at them. Now, these animals here, they're prepared for these migration journeys, both physically, their DNA, the migration paths are programmed into them. So, they're well prepared. Us humans, with our migrations, I think we've traded in our migration capabilities a while ago for all the tech, planes, trains, automobiles, and we really need to double down on our preparation so that we know what to expect and we're ready and equipped to make the journey to cloud. And so there is a famous quote here from Benjamin Franklin: "By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail." And so what I'd really like to give you today is an idea of the kind of tools and support that you can get from us here at Atlassian to make sure we're preparing you for the best migration possible to cloud. Human migrations, whether they've been land, sea, outer space, cloud migrations as well, have always gone well when we've had someone step forward and make that first defining voyage, pioneers. And what happens there is that we get to know and discover the unknowns of these paths so that we know what to expect when we actually make our migration. And so really, I really urge for you to get started with your voyage, no matter when you think you're going to do your migration. Really, if you can today, try out a cloud migration and start discovering what that path is going to look like. I'm Jason Wong, Principal Product Manager with the Atlassian Cloud Migrations team. We're your transportation service to help you get to cloud. We're backed by the Atlassian Migration Program, which includes step-by-step migration guidance. We're also supplying you with migration support, as well as some incentives and discounts to make the move. So please visit atlassian.com/migration, take the assessment, and we'll provide you with some next steps. Today, I'm going to give you an intro to the Cloud Migration Assistance to help you make the move. We'll do a demo, and I'll put in there some pro tips and a bit of what's coming next. So what is a Cloud Migration Assistant? Essentially, it's an app that you can download and install on server or DC. You select project spaces or repositories if you're in Jira, Confluence, or Bitbucket. And the app will migrate the necessary users and groups, the attachments, core product data, and for Jira and Confluence, also third-party app data. Under the hood, we've built a lot of technology to orchestrate and move all this data in a cloud-native way, so you can be sure that the data is in good shape once we import it into cloud and get you running. We've been pretty busy building a lot of features over time. We've been adding a lot of support for all the core products that Atlassian has to move from server data center to cloud. We've still got one major one that's missing here, if anyone can guess what that is, in the Confluence swim lane, and that is Team Calendars. Working hard to get that to you, hopefully by the middle of this calendar year. Now, all of these migration services and the Cloud Migration Assistance have been developed iteratively with our customers, starting with early access programs with our very engaged early adopters in Atlassian community, always wanting to get the latest Atlassian has to offer and give us feedback. Really big thanks to everyone who's been involved in that. From that, we then move into a beta development stage, and our Atlassian support team get a lot of requests from customers moving to cloud and need solutions as early as possible. And again, trying out the latest developments we have to make the migration to cloud possible. And all this happens before we make it generally available, which happens by us putting updates onto the Cloud Migration Assistance, which are available for download on Atlassian Marketplace. So be assured, by the time you get this, it's been run through many dev cycles and real migration experiences from our customers. Now, there's a lot going on with migrations. Essentially, we have to know how to migrate every single data object that exists in the Atlassian portfolio suite between the differences in server DC versions and cloud editions. And so if there's something that's missing, or if there's something you feel you need to make a successful migration, please write down this URL, go.atlassian.com/MIG. That will take you to our public issue tracker, and you can create a request there and be sure to get that to the team for consideration on future roadmaps. Cloud migration assistants are available as a free download, no cost to you at all. And we have pre-installed them on Confluence since 6.13 and Jira since 8.14. Also looking to do that in Bitbucket just for that added convenience so that you can get started on your migration as soon as possible. If they are pre-installed, you will need to just update the app so you've got the latest copy of the app. All right, let's get into a demo. I'm going to show you a fully loaded Jira Cloud Migration Assistant demo, putting as much data as we can or different types to show you what you can do. So first thing is navigation. How do we get to the Cloud Migration Assistant? Go up to the top right, the cog there, and navigate to your system administration section. Along the way, you're probably going to be asked to sign in again because you are accessing an administration part of Jira. And on the left side there, scroll about halfway down and you'll see a cluster of app features called Import and Export, and click on Migrate to Cloud. That gets you to the Cloud Migration Assistant. Now, for those power users, you probably know about the quick menu where you can hit the full stop and you'll get this search box drop down. Just type in Migrate and you'll see the option Migrate to Cloud pop up, and that allows you to access the Cloud Migration Assistant from anywhere very quickly. So just a little tip there. So you can see here 3 major steps: assess your apps, prepare your apps, migrate your data. We'll run through those. And on the right there, the data available on this instance to migrate. I've kept it pretty lightweight so we don't have to wait for the data to migrate during the demo. Let's get started. So step 1, assess your apps. Now, where this lands us is a summary of all the apps that we have installed on our server or data center instance. And many apps are integrated quite tightly with the product, the data, the users using them. So, what we want to do here is get a clear understanding of whether these apps are going to be continued to be used in cloud, including whether there's an expectation that these are going to be migrated, depending on how they work. So you see here, we've got 3 apps listed, and for each of them, there is a status box that is sort of asking for an input as to what's going to happen to this app. We can mark it as needed in cloud, not needed in cloud, use alternative, or if you're still figuring that out, leave it as no decision made. To help with the decision, we've got some information on the right here. So in this column, it says exists in cloud, and that means that this app does have an equivalent in cloud, and it's not always the case. So you want to be sure that this particular app developer has developed a cloud edition. You'll see links in there below the ticks, view differences, view listing, and that takes you to documentation supplied by the app developer that will talk about whether there are any differences between their server versions and cloud editions. Now, further to the app existing in cloud, another key consideration is whether you can migrate the data across. So in this example, you can see this app has an automated path, green tick, which means this app developer has integrated to our Cloud Migration Assistant, and it will be listening out for calls from us when we move core data like projects and spaces, and they'll be then called upon to do their job at the appropriate time during the migration. Now, you'll notice further down here, there's a grey tick on this one, and it says view path. The grey tick means that it is migratable, it's just not automated. And so again, click on that link there, view path, and it will send you to the developer with some instructions on how to complete the migration. There'll be some manual steps involved, is essentially what that means. So let's go through and mark one of each for demo purposes. This one needed in cloud, this one not needed in cloud, and use an alternative. As you can see here, we're now complete with this step. I should mention as well, there's a notes field that you can put in there. Understand there's many other data points going into decisions. So there's a free text field there. Also down here, you can download a copy of the CSV. You might want to move it to a spreadsheet if you've got lots of other data you want to join it with, or share it with other people. Okay, so on one of those decisions there, we said we're going to use an alternative. So essentially what we're doing here now is instructing the cloud migration assistant what the alternative app is. I'll just put in structure as that comes to mind. And that sort of completes now our assessment of what we're going to do with the apps. The scope is now clear on whether we're going to migrate them or not, or use an alternative. So I want to pause there for a second, just insert a bit of a pro tip here. Now, it's important to understand that each of these app migration paths are built individually by each of the app developers. And so what will happen, as you'll see in the demo, is once the core data is migrated, we then hand over to the third party to run their bit. Now, it varies dramatically depending on how they're built and what the app does. And so what this means is not only do you need to make sure that the migration of the core data is well prepared, but also each and every app that needs to also get its data across. It just adds more things that need to be checked over. So biggest tip here is just make sure you double down on testing when you've got apps included. Those of you with the Keynote also spot this screen here, and it's got some additional information showing how often an app appears on pages and is viewed by certain users. And this is a screenshot from the Confluence Cloud Migration Assistance app assessment, and we've had some really good feedback about how this helps with the decisions in terms of usage. The Jira one, as you know, doesn't have that, where we're taking the feedback positive feedback we've had on the Confluence version and considering whether we can get that in for you in Jira as well. So let's move on to step 2. Prepare your apps. So now we're getting to the point where we're starting to get into migration mode. So the first thing we want to do now is, for the first time, connect our Cloud Migration Assistant to our destination site in Cloud. Now, what this has done is send us out to Cloud. I've already signed in here. You might have to go through a sign-in process for Atlassian Cloud. But once you've done that, you need to put in your source URL. And in this drop-down, it will show you all the cloud sites you have the ability to migrate data to. I prepared this one, so I'll choose CMA demo. Also, you need to check this box here, which grants access to the Cloud Migration Assistant to go and export data from your source and write it into Cloud. Also sharing some product analytics so we can improve the product. So important to check that one, just so the Cloud Migration Assistant has your permission to go and run some migrations. Going back to the Cloud Migration Assistant now, we can see we've got a destination site that is approved for us to start migrating data towards. So on this screen, if you recall, we had marked down one of the apps is needed in Cloud and the other one we're going to use an alternative. So that means there's 2 apps that are expected to be in our destination site ready for the migration. And so what happens here is we'll go through and install the app and make sure that the app is up and running in Cloud, so that when we start calling migrations, the app is, you don't have to go install it. It's already waiting and ready. So that's one of 2. We'll just quickly get the other one done. You can see there the first one's installed now. Just click on that link. The link is deep linking us into the exact spot over in our Cloud destination site where we can conveniently just install the app in a couple of clicks. Okay, so back in the Cloud Migration Assistant, we can see they're installed and complete. There's another step here. If you recall, one of the apps that we said needed in Cloud does have an automated migration path. And so part of this app migration, we need you to look at the details of what kind of access to data it's going to have. So please read through that. And if you're comfortable with that, you can then click confirm to accept. And that completes our app preparation so that we're ready to go for a migration. All right, let's get to the fun part here. Step 3, migrate your data. You can click through here, create a new migration. This screen here is just playing through what you're going to see. When you actually run your migration, it's good to take a moment to just pause and read this so you can refresher of the steps that are going to happen as we put a migration together. So give it a name. You can have different migrations and creating many with different kinds of things you want to migrate. And again, just confirm that site we previously set up and gave permission to migrate data to. So next, we want to be telling the Cloud Migration Assistant what do we want to migrate, choosing the different options. Now I'm going to go through and load up this with many different data types. We can, so a bit of advanced roadmaps we'll include in here. We want in the projects, one of each of our major Jira products, Jira Software, Jira Service Management, and Jira Work Management type projects. Next, our user and group migration options. The default here is to migrate all users and groups from the Jira directory, and that normally is fine. But there are cases where I've seen customers, connect their Jira directory to their corporate directory, and in that example, the customer only needed 4 groups to be migrated, but it tried to pull down 15,000 from the corporate directory. So if you're in that kind of situation, consider using the other option here, only users and groups related to the selected projects. And what that does is, of the projects we selected, it will actually scan the data and looking for references to users to include it in the migration. So people commenting, @mentioned, assigned, and so forth. Now, these checkboxes I've just put here also then gives you the option to include users who may also be related by way of, say, permissions. So if they've been given access via a role or a group to view or administrate, that also adds them into the scope of this. So it gives you a lot more precision about who actually is needed to be migrated in order to get the same kind of level of access and participation as you had in the source server or data center. So we'll go with that. And secondly, there's some other options here. The default is to migrate users and groups separately. And what that means is the users won't be put into groups, so they won't be granted permissions, they won't be granted product access. This is pretty good for testing because it doesn't interrupt anyone or opens things up. If you're doing your final migration, it might make sense to choose the other option, which preserves group memberships, actually adds the users to their groups, which activates permissions and product access. Next, we can choose whether to migrate customers for JSM projects. We'll go with the select only those related to the selected projects, very similar to the user and group options previously spoke about. And finally, confirmation that we want to migrate the app. We had one app that had an automated migration path to include. So as you see, they're pretty fully loaded up, big migration, again, for the demo here, so you can see the variety of things that we can migrate. I want to pause and just throw in a bit of a pro tip here. Now, when you run a migration, things take a while. And when you do that, you have to lock down your source instance, and that means people can't work. And you're sort of rushing to get the migration done so that everything's ready in cloud before people can be let in and get back to work. And so a lot of customers typically will run a migration during a planned downtime when it makes, with minimum impact to the business, and overnight or over the weekend. And so here's a technique that you can use to try and reduce that downtime, which effectively is like a planned outage. And that is by pre-migrating as much data as you can ahead of your actual production migration. So it is possible in that screen on Choose What to Migrate I showed you to only run a user and group migration, nothing else. Don't choose any projects, plans, just users and groups. And when you run a user and group migration, it actually doesn't take anyone offline. No one is locked out of source or destination. Everyone can continue working. So that can take, a fairly long time. It doesn't really matter. And by pre-migrating users and groups, they're already there. So when you actually come around to your final migration, we only need to migrate incrementally, like any user groups have been added since that first migration. Typically, that's very small. So it just means we get that migration window down. Same thing going for attachments. You'll notice in the example I just gave before, there was no way to choose attachments. And that was, I recorded this actually not that long ago. We've actually shipped this feature now. So when you go into the migration assistance for yourself to give this a try, you'll see an option to do attachments. Just choose attachments, nothing else. And exactly in the same way using groups, you can run that and it won't take anything offline. No one gets disturbed. Attachments can be very heavy, so you can run this for a week, getting your attachments into cloud, and then when you come around to your actual final migration, it only needs to migrate any new attachments created. Now, typically speaking, the benefits of this can vary depending on your frequency of usage and patterns of usage, but statistically, we've seen a gain of between 80 to 98% in reducing downtime using these techniques. Now, we're also working at other ways that we can maybe extend this to core product data. For example, migrating all of your issues in a pre-migration run. And then when you get to final migration, we then only have to migrate new issues and update the issues that have been changed since. App data currently doesn't work that way. It has to wait for the core product data to migrate before the third party can get involved and operate on those key spaces or projects. But something we will have to consider in the future if that's causing too much downtime. Okay, back to our demo. The next thing is we're going to check for errors. And we nicknamed this the pre-flight check page, where it looks for things that could cause your migration not to run very smoothly. So system checks, like have we got the latest version of our migration assistance, any problems with the data shaping and users and groups. You can see a warning there for exceeding limit for agents, and that's because I'm on a Jira Service Management trial, which is fine for this demo. Our customers check it okay, projects look fine, ready to go, advanced roadmap. So everything's looking fairly good. We can move to the next page. Now you'll see in the bottom right there, I have the ability now to save the migration. So if I don't want to run it now, I want to save it, come back later, hit that save button. And if you return to it, this is where you'll come back to. So again, it's just going to play back a summary of any issues from the previous page. And so to help you find your place again, you can click on that and just again, look through what caused that warning. Oh yeah, it was that I'm on a trial. That should be fine for this demo. And so again, I'm going to pause here with a bit of a pro tip around what happens when you don't get all green checks passing. And you're most likely going to run into this next problem here around users and groups. And it's highly likely you're going to run into these. 30 to 40% of our customers will have an invalid email address problem. 40 to 50 will run into a multiple user with the same email address problem. And this is coming from the fact that our user management systems are very different as we move from server and data center to cloud. It's username-based login. When we move to cloud, we need to be on an Atlassian ID, which requires a unique email address per unique person. And so there's a lot of preparation here just to make sure the data is in the correct shape so that we can migrate to cloud. The good thing through this process is you do end up GDPR compliant. And if you're planning to use an external IDP, it's also something that's going to be needed by that external IDP as well. If you're already using external IDP, you may have already encountered a lot of these problems and so you may not have to spend as much time on it. But to drill into the detail here, here an example of users that will cause an invalid warning to pop up. You can see here the email addresses are not properly formed, so you just simply need to go and make sure they're correct. And you'll see a bunch of users here who have multiple username logins in server or DC, but with the same email address. So you need to merge these users and their email addresses so that they've got a unique email address per unique person. And so this is a common one. I just wanted to give you an example of overall this whole theme of making sure that your data is in the right shape for cloud. And that gives you the best way to be prepared so that the migration will run as smoothly and cleanly as possible. This is one of many. Please go to this document here, go.atlassian.com/pre-migration checklist. This example I've given is on that page, as well as some other kind of data preparation you might want to think about doing. Back to our demo. As we go down the page, I do want to show you something here. It's a little bit hidden. Click on the Logs and Reports tab. It's called the Pre-Migration Report. You can download the Pre-Migration Report, and what that gives you three things: a summary report on what you can expect to migrate successfully, what may not migrate successfully. A second report that will give you the detail on what you might want to do to prepare, again, get the data in the right shape. Some things may not migrate, so suggestions on how you can get that data across using other methods and things that could go wrong. So a really good report there for helping you get ready pre-migration. Get a lot of good feedback from that one. And the third report you get is a download of all the users that are migrated to cloud and as part of this migration. So you get clarity on who's being moved to cloud. So back to our migration, we'll click on the other tab. And now we can see our 3 projects, our app ready to go. Let's Let's hit the run button. Okay, so you can see now that migration is in progress. You can see the progress spinner starting there. Now notice there's two parts to progress. The second one saying we're ready to migrate app data. And that is, again, the app data migration waiting for the core migration of project and spaces to complete before it can start. Now, clicking in for more details, this is, again, just playing back all the options we selected as we composed our migration order previously. And further down the page, we can now look at the progress that's taking place. So you can see the users, groups, and customers migrating first before we start project data. So again, remember those tips I gave about trying to pre-migrate as many users, groups as you can, and attachments. Again, that will, when you come through to do the actual migration, you can appreciate how those things would happen a lot faster because that you've already migrated the vast majority of that data already, and it just needs to do an incremental migration top up. I spent this up about 8 times. It does take a while, so be prepared for that. And once we have our core project data, you can see now we've moved on to apps. So this is the point where the cloud migration assistant is handing over to the app developer of the third-party app and allowing them to do what they need to do. And they'll report back here once that's complete. So there you go. So our migration is now complete. Both core data and the app data is done. Let's click into the details a bit more. And what I do want to show you, again, going back to our tab here, there's a post-migration report you'll see pop up now, which is the sister to the pre-migration report, exactly the same data, just produced for you after the migration, a good report there to just verify what actually was migrated. Now we can click over, go to Cloud Site, and just verify those 3 project types are there, and our plan should be there too. So there you have it, a fully loaded Jira cloud migration with all the things in it. Now, some of you advanced admins are probably wondering, how are we migrating projects across when they, are sort of interconnected in various interesting, complicated ways, potentially in terms of the shared configuration schemes. And so to give you an understanding how we've solved this wiring situation, I wanted to share with you how we actually migrate the shared configuration. So it's common to have projects sharing a configuration scheme such as a workflow. And so what happens is when you select some projects to migrate, again, with the demo I've given you, the cloud migration assistant will figure out what those projects need to function in cloud in a similar way to the source. And so here it'll migrate the workflow. Later on, when a project that was sharing it finally makes its way to cloud, we have built in some mapping technology that knows and tracks every object that we migrate. So in this case, it knows not to go and duplicate the workflow, and it's already been migrated. So let's relink it. And really what we're trying to do is try and give you the ability to retain your admin model to be as close as it was before the migration, so that your users have a bit more of a seamless move to cloud. Now, this is one of many things that happen. So if you're interested in what happens and how we deal with some of the shared configuration schemes, as well as just the data objects themselves, please go to this document, How the Jira Cloud Migration Assistant Links Your Data. The shortcut link is there below. Particularly when you're doing more fancy migrations where you might be going project by project incrementally or involving mergers, it's quite important to understand the logic here. And a key tip here is if you are doing those things between migrations, do everything you can to avoid allowing changes to happen, because that just shifts the foundations and it introduces merge conflicts. So that's the pro tip here for those of you doing more fancy migrations. Confluence Cloud Migration Assistant works in a very similar way. It's just that you select spaces to migrate instead of projects. Similarly with Bitbucket, you're choosing repositories to migrate. The big thing I want to call out with the Bitbucket Cloud Migration Assistant is that it has introduced for the first time the ability to migrate pull requests. Really important, right, to know, have that record of who's reviewed the code before they've been put out to production. Importantly, in a lot of the commit messages in these pull requests contain references to Jira keys. And so once you migrate to Bitbucket Cloud, the information is there to allow you to reintegrate and sync your code with your Jira issues. And just a quote from our customers about using the cloud migration assistance to have a successful migration. We've seen a lot of success so far, and I hope you are able to pick up some of those tips from today on your journey to cloud. Now, going forward, I don't have time to dig into a detailed roadmap for you with this session, but we're going to be focusing on ensuring that we continue to have good reliability. The data gets across to cloud smoothly. We want to give you more control, more self-service ability, so that when you need to troubleshoot, you don't have to call into Atlassian support and go through an experience of bouncing tickets back and forth. We want to give you as much control and ability to get prepared and set the right kind of migration readiness. Also downtime, making sure that we can get that down as small as possible. We spoke about that, making that adding risk to your execution. So getting the downtime smaller. Conversely, that also means larger and larger migrations can be run. So overall, we're committed to improvements on our migration roadmap here to make sure we're giving you a fast, confident move and ensuring you've got that continuity as you step onto cloud. So I hope you got a lot out today, hopefully some pro tips as well. And really urge you to go today, go to this URL, go.atlassian.com/download-CMAs, download, install the Cloud Migration Assistance and take that first defining voyage so that you can be ready and know what to expect on your cloud migration. Thank you very much.